Welcome back to First Year in Medical Device Sales. I am your host, Jacob McLaughlin, and today we have the pleasure of having a true expert in medical device sales. Not only has our guest been in marketing, been in sales, was a sales trainer, but is also now back in marketing, working for one of the largest medical device sales companies in the world. And we are going to learn so much because this guest is, first off, one of the best people I've ever met. Just being able to hang out with, get to know. She is a bubbly personality. You're always going to be laughing. You're always going to be having a good time. But you're actually going to be learning from someone who has 20 plus years experience today, who's an absolute expert, knows what she's talking about, has worked for some of the largest companies in the world. And I want you all to really listen to this episode multiple times because I know it's only going to provide you value. So today we get the pleasure of having Miss Heidi Spiegel join us on today's podcast. So Heidi, welcome to New to Medical Device Sales and First Year In.
Thank you, Jacob. What an introduction. I don't think I've ever got such an introduction before.
Oh, well, you have a lot more coming your way here soon because we already know where it's going. But I just want to say, first off, thank you again for taking time today to join us because I know you're extremely busy. You've been flying all over the world, doing product launches, doing a lot of fun stuff. And just want to say thank you for making time just to join us and provide value to our listeners because it truly means the world.
Absolutely. No, I really love what you're doing. And I think what you're doing is just going to help the medical device community as a whole to get the sales reps ready for big companies like ours.
Yeah, and I'm excited for it because again, like you and I got to meet when I was at Innovis, but got the opportunity to be at a similar company, and it's been a lot of fun just to be able to see it. But it's so much fun to be able to talk to people that have been top performers, true experts, but you've been able to climb the ranks and go into a lot of different parts of medical device sales. And that's one thing that I'm so excited to talk about today because you've not only been just in sales or just in marketing, and also not just sales training. You've been able to go see around a lot of the pieces of the industry that most people have never actually even seen. They might hear about it, they might just talk about it, but you're actually someone who's lived it, done the traveling, gone global, been able to go do product launches. And most people are like, you can do that in med device sales. Yeah. And so I just want you to know it is going to be such a fun conversation today to just learn more about your experience. But before we jump too much into the weeds and give a lot of value, can you just give a little more background about just who you are, where you're from, and what got you into med device sales?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So Heidi Spiegel, I'm originally from Connecticut, but now I live in sunny California. So the great part about being in global medical devices, I choose where I live and I choose California. So that's great. So it's wild. Everybody's journey into med device is different. And I didn't have the opportunity to have a program like yours available when I was looking to get into med device. And to be honest, I didn't even know I was looking at the time. I was a marketer. You know, I went to school for marketing. So I was a marketer and I thought I was going to be in entertainment marketing. So I worked for a Coliseum. And then I realized at the top of my game, if I even got to the GM level, I would make maybe $100,000. That's what they were making at the time. And I said, God, there's got to be something different out here, right? Like there's like one GM for every, big Coliseum. And how many Coliseums are there? There's not that many.
Yep.
And I'm like, how am I going to make any money in this? And then I had a customer who was the vice president of a medical device company. And he's like, I love your personality. I love, how good you are with your customers. He said, well, how about med device? And I looked at him and go, what is a girl who knows nothing about medical device, just an entertainment, going to do a med device? He goes, we'll teach you. And that's kind of why I relate to your program too. I didn't know anything. I didn't have a degree in med device, but they were willing to teach me, not at the level to go jump into sales at that time, but I got to jump into marketing and start small, right? Start in just helping out support the sales team. So I was sales support when I first started. And then I sort of built up to do more marketing, and I was there for 10 years at my first company. And then I switched out and jumped into sales. So it took me about 10 years, but I did go through sales training while I was in marketing because I thought that was important.
I love that. No, and there's a couple of nuggets that I just want to touch on real quick is like what you stated was, number one, just when you were looking, you're like, hey, there's got to be more, right? Like you were in your career and you're like, hey, 100K, it's great. But like you knew you were meant for much more of like than just 100 grand. And let me just make this real clear to everyone. There's nothing wrong with it. That's a great living to a lot of people, they would be extremely happy with it. But like the one thing I've noticed with a lot of like top performers and stuff, like you and I have talked about this a lot, is just like knowing that you could do more. You have the opportunity. And like I talk to so many of our students and the people that reach out to me, that's a common thing. They're like, hey, I know I'm doing okay. I know I could do this, but I know I'm going to be tapped out at 100, 150, but I know I'm meant for so much more. And so can you just kind of share that experience of like, hey, you were working hard, but like, what was that piece of like, I know I can do something different. I know I can make more. I could do more for my life.
Yeah, it was a colleague of mine. He ended up making the jump to med device, and he
Mhm.
was working alongside me because the the president of the company that we work for, brought him into, and he's like, Heidi, this is great. He goes, just think. And he actually sat me down and said, think about where your career is going. And I owe this to him, right? He's like, look at all the places in the world that you would go for entertainment, right? I was making, and I hate saying this now, I was making maybe 32,000 a year at the time. Oh, and I was working nights and weekends and
Yeah.
holidays
Yeah.
and, because that's the entertainment world.
Yep.
And granted, I got to see a lot of concerts and stuff. It was fun, but at a certain point, you're like, well, where's the work-life balance? And
Yes.
how am I ever going to make more than $35,000?
Yeah. Like that's such a good point because like, so I did strength and conditioning. And that was the thing is I remember working with those guys and if you guys don't know about strength and conditioning, they take pride in working 100 hours a week and making under $40,000 a year. Again, nothing wrong. Go hustle, go do your thing. But it's like my whole conversation was, I remember talking to a guy, he was 32. He worked literally 100 hours a week, 7 days a week in the gym, and he lived with roommates and he couldn't take a vacation. Like, and I don't mean like a vacation like going across the world. I mean like, hey, you want to go from the Black Hills from Sioux City, Iowa, which is an 8-hour drive. And he's like, I can't make that. And that was just something that kind of hit me. And so to your point, there's so many people that are listening to this podcast right now that are in that, like we get so many people that are making that 40, 45, 50K. They're hustling, but they're struggling, but they're like, I know I could do something different. Like I think that's one thing that it's so thankful that you had that friend to actually care about you enough to sit there and say, hey, you could do more. You could have that opportunity because I see the same thing. Is like I see it every day and I've had people like that's why I'm here where I'm at is like I've had people who I tell people all the time, my goal of my life was I'm going to go be a personal trainer, like really it was occupational therapist, make $80,000 a year and drive a Cadillac and I'm the richest man on earth. And then I met a millionaire out here and he's like, you are meant for so much more and you're so much farther ahead of me than I was. At the time I was 23, driving a $3,000 car, broke as heck. And I was like, that's all I needed to hear. Right. And so I wanted to touch on that because I'm so thankful you had that person, but I wanted to share that with people because there's so many in the audience right now that are making 20, 30, 40K, 50K, stuck, not happy. They're trying to decide where they want. And so many people at 25, 28, 30, 34, they think this is what it has to be. And they're too old to make the jump. So I just appreciate you sharing that.
No, thank you for saying that. And I think people are lucky to have a program like this with you guiding them because you are that friend to them. Like I had that friend, your words and what you're sharing is like the friend I had. So for those listening, Jacob's telling you the truth, it's a better life. And obviously I love entertainment. I still go to concerts. I still go to events, right? But now I go on my time and I have fun, right? But the other side of it too is with med device, it's different, right? It hits me here, right? It always has. Even 20 years later, I do it because I love what I do and because we actually make a difference, right? We make a difference. And I always say it's not just the life that's on the table that you make a difference for. It's every single life that touches the life that's on the table, their family, their friends, their siblings. And if you help that one person, you've helped an entire family. I get goosebumps now just saying it because, some people get into this for the wrong reasons, but if you get into this and you have this mentality that you really want to help people, you will have longevity in this career.
Come on. And I need you guys to just listen to that one more time because so many times people will message me and they're like, I just want the money. Or I just want to, there's so many people who just want the title med device sales. Because people know, like just the other day, I was at a baby shower for my buddy who's having his second baby. And someone's like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm in med device sales. And rubs my shoulder and is like, oh, that's a great career. And I'm like, good Lord, like, what are we doing here? But the reason I'm saying that is that's what people want. They want the title, they want the stuff. But like you said, what was always the biggest thing for me is who am I impacting? Why am I doing this? Because like when you have a doctor hug you and say that person's alive because of you, that means something. When you know that you're going in, that surgeon, like I've been with surgeons, when you first work with them, you're like, goodness gracious, to a year later, you're like, yeah, they're amazing. They're awesome. And that patient's getting the best care. Like you said, they're not coming back for a second surgery. You know, you're actually getting the first thing done. I always thought about it as like when I was in women's health, my mom, my grandma, my sister, like, what are we doing? And the point you said the biggest, and what I want every single person to hear, longevity. Like we talk about this all the time, is like there's so many reps in this industry that are 5, 10, 15 years, and they're just bitter. They're just not happy. And so many times I watch it, it's because first off, it's always selfish. And yes, you have to make your own bills and you have to do your own stuff, but it's because they want what they want. Usually what I also see is they focus on themselves at all time, always trying to sell, be the used car salesperson. That's why they don't get liked and they don't make the sales. And then they creep their income and then they just make their lifestyle the same thing. And now they have to do the work. And now it's no longer they're doing it because they want to actually help people in the passion. It's they have to do it to make the dollars and make mortgage and make rent. And so I just wanted to share that because you're 100% right. If you always just focus with the end in mind of the human beings that you're affecting and making a difference in, that's where you see the people that are truly in for 5, 10, 15 years, just happy. And still, like you said, still getting goosebumps.
Yeah, still getting goosebumps. And I like what you said about, don't be the used car salesman. And the great part about med device, if you're in this for the right reasons, you can't, right? Because
come on,
right? You know where I'm going with this, right? You can't, because we have regulations that we have to follow. There's FDA, there's standards. We can't say certain things. Yep. We have to say things that are only approved, clinical statements that are approved that we're allowed to say. And this is where I've seen people get in trouble. And this is kind of the trainer side of me. I know Jacob said I was a corporate trainer. Yes, I was a global trainer for about 3 or 4 years, probably 3 going on 4 years. But what I've seen in the past is that when I train folks, some people like to embellish the truth. That they'll say, like in our roles, like our practice for a med device, we'd have a product in front of us. They'd tell me about the product, and then I'd pretend I'm the surgeon. I'd ask a question, and they would answer it and not be honest. They would say, I'm not, instead of saying, I'm not sure, they would give me the answer that they think I want to hear. Yes, it does that. Yes, you can do that. And you can't do that in med device.
Good luck. We actually just had a talk about this. Our coach that we work with as well, she works for one of the largest companies in the world as well. And she's in sales and has absolutely crushed it. And that was actually one of the things she shared at our event the other day, was there was somebody from a competitive account who a doctor asked a question, but this is the thing. He already knew the answer. He was quizzing the person who had been in for 2 years. And our coach at the time had been in for only 3 months, was brand new. He asked the question. The rep, first off, didn't know the answer and then gave a not truthful answer. And then he said, if I ask the new rep that's not from the company and they can answer it, we're done here. And he did that. She answered it. That rep, he said, get out of my room. And it was for a very big company that you have to get proctored for and do certifications and all this stuff. And he said, she's like, but you're not done with your proctoring. And he's like, I will never use it ever again in this hospital. Get out of my room. And she said, it's been 2 years and he still won't allow her to come in, because it goes back to everything that we talk about, you guys. So many reps will be about their ego. And they want to be like, oh, this is what it is, or this is, yeah, just tell the doctor, yes, man, yes, man, yes, man, right? You become that yes, man, and you can't do that because it's the patient on the table. What happens when you say yes and it's no, and that doctor does that on that patient, and now there's a problem with it? Because guess what? You as the rep, you're not going to see that patient. That surgeon's going to see that patient again. And so I'm just so glad you made that comment, because it is the absolute truth of like, you have to be as truthful. And here's the thing. You will get so much more respect if you actually just say, I don't know. Here's just the thing for you all. Don't say I don't know when it's the same question 5 times. Like, actually learn it and then go figure it out and then write it down. So just want to put that out there.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. The surgeon will be so honored to hear you say, you know what, doctor, thank you for asking that question. I'm not 100% sure of that answer, but if you let me look into it, I will absolutely get back to you.
Yep.
That's all they want to know. And if the patient is on the table when that question is being asked, maybe you step out of that room, make a phone call, call somebody who does know, because that answer does need to happen now.
Yep.
So you can't lie when a patient is on the table, and you can't make any mistakes because a life is in your hands at that
Yep.
moment. And that's the magic of what we do, the power of what we do. And that kind of hits on one other thing that I want to share is that it is an absolute honor to be in somebody's OR and to be in that OR. If somebody lets you into that OR, you have to be humble. You have to know your place in that OR and respect the OR environment. Every single person that works in that OR, not just the surgeon, but the nurses, the techs, and their process. If you can respect that, they will respect you.
Yes.
And not only will they respect you, but they will welcome you into their OR. And then when they see you come into their hospital, they will say hello. They will provide you information to help you make a sale to their doctor. And I think, Jacob, I think we've talked about this before. It's not just everybody in the OR that's important. Everybody in the hospital, even the janitor,
Come
right?
on, one more time.
We've said it. If you talk to everybody in that hospital and you make them as important as a surgeon that you're speaking to in the sale that you want to make, that sale will happen so much faster. You don't know how many pieces of information I've got from a janitor. The person that comes in and cleans the room would say to me, Heidi, goes, Dr. X, right? In a bad mood today. you might you might want to talk to him a little bit later. I said, good point. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about this, and I talked to this with everyone that was at our event the other day. Is like, first off, we are never better than anybody else.
Absolutely.
Like that's one thing I think that's I can sit here and tell you that's what gives a lot of reps bad names. They walk in, act like they own the place. They think they're above people. And like that's why reps get a bad name in this industry, right? When they don't treat scrub techs and nurses with respect, they talk down to somebody, right? Like, first off, that's the most degrading thing ever. But number two, like nobody's better than everybody, right? Like we're all the same. But here's number two. You know how many times like I tell our people about the janitor, like I always put myself in the janitor room because it's like, what can you do to always have value? And if you're like the best janitor, they're not going to fire you, right? And it's like, so that's what's so cool. But here's the better part. You know how many times I've had a talk with a janitor, like you just said, and they knew a surgeon I would been trying to get in a conversation with? Like they're like best friends, or every time they see him, the doctor talks.
Yeah, they'll point them out. Oh, like that's not so, because you can't see their name tags. You don't know who every doctor
Exactly.
is. They could walk right by you and you have no idea who they are. And if you ask them, say, oh, he looks like this, he looks like that, and they'll give you details. Yeah.
They'll give them details. So it goes from the janitor, the scrub tech, to the nurse, like just being friendly with them. And this isn't the biggest thing, you guys, is what we talk about. Like I've said this a million times, but I'll say it one more time. Is like, everyone's like, oh, how'd you be so successful in med device sales? It was because I never tried to be the med device sales rep. I just tried to be the personal trainer I was. What's that? Just getting to know somebody. Like the biggest thing, like when we do mentees, like we have people that are in the industry that I now help and talk with them too. It's like, do you know how long the scrub tech's been there? Do you know what got them into scrubbing? Do they have family? Do they have dogs? Do they have kids? Do you know why? Like, do you know about their life? Because here's the thing, when people know, like this is a big thing in strength and conditioning, nobody will do anything until they know how much you care, right? Know more about them and then how you can be an asset, and you just win it every time, compared to what most people do is they're just like, what can I get from this situation? Again, it goes back to what you just said, Heidi, is like everything you're saying goes back to how can you provide value? Just having a conversation, just being nice, just like talking to someone, just getting to know them. It shows that you're an actual genuine human being and you're not just out for yourself.
Right. And I love what you're saying there, is getting to know them, knowing what their challenges are, even in the hospital. So even the techs and the surgeons and the nurses, they all have different challenges within that OR environment. What are they? And once you get to know them to your level, right, that you're mentioning, then they open up and they'll tell you, right? And once they tell you what the problem is, as a sales rep, your job is to help fix that problem. How can you offer a solution to that problem, whether it's your product, whether it's a process that the company might offer that could help in that situation? And I'm going to go back to a little bit about a transition. So I was in marketing and moved to sales. And it's interesting because when I got hired in sales, I was with a different company. It was with somebody who knew me from a past role and knew me as a marketer and hired me in a high level sales role, right? So I got hired pretty high on. And he looked at me and goes, I just put a marketer in a sales role. He goes, am I crazy? And I'm like, no, you're not crazy, right? And then a year later, I was a top sales rep, right? So our division went from, 60% to number one. And I had every regional manager calling our region to find out, what did you do? How are you getting successful? How'd you take a failing region and make it number one? And it's a marketing tactic, right? And we talk about staying with somebody. So what we did, exactly to your point, I learned what they needed. And at that time, what they needed was they needed someone to go in, work with their residents, be with them, and train them. So that's what I did. Maybe I didn't make that immediate sale right away, and I didn't, right? I had to put in the time, the blood, the sweat, the tears, go show up. I brought trainers, I brought product, and I said, okay, here are all the things that your residents need to know based on what the fundamentals of laparoscopic surgery are.
Yep.
And I set up those training events for them every month, and I documented what those results were, and I brought it back every month to see if they got better. That wasn't my job, but I made it my job because that was their need. And you know what happened when I showed up every month to that event? More surgeons showed up. The chief chief financial officer showed up to those. I had everybody from all different departments showing up. And then when I got the meeting and I said, okay, well, we have a lot to offer this hospital outside of this. I got invited to a large meeting where the CEO of the hospital set up, put all the surgeons around the table from all the different divisions and said, tell us about what you have. And I was like sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, I've worked this for 6-8 months. And now I'm doing conversion. And we're making, and because we developed that relationship, we talk about the stickiness and the longevity, they stuck with the products.
Come on.
It wasn't just bringing it on once and they said, okay, well, we trust you. And it's developing that trust and that ability to understand what they need. So we aren't 100% just sales reps, we're consultants. Understand your customer.
Preach it one more time. It is the absolute truth, because here's the thing. Let me just bring it back to, like, we always tell people, doing the job to get the job. It is no different if you're trying to break into medical device sales if you're in it. So many people try to make the sale the first time. They try to get on a call and be like, do you know of any jobs? On the first call, right? I always bring it back to dating. That's like getting coffee 5 minutes in. You're like, want to go back to my place? Now, you guys all do your own thing, but that is not how you most likely find the one you're going to spend the rest of your life with, right? Maybe it is. All right, maybe someone's going to message me. But the reason I'm just sitting here telling you is, like, it takes time. It's building the relationships, right? And we always say this, what can you do today that's going to help you in 3, 6, 12 months from now? But so many people want the quick hit. They want it now. They want to be able to tell people. They want to be able to feel, but that's not how this works. It's any relationship, right? You have to build trust. And that was one of the biggest things when I was a new rep. I'd come in, I'm like, hey, I know you don't know me, and I can say whatever I want to you, right? And you guys are just going to blow me off. But over the next 6 to 12 months, I can't wait to prove to you I mean what I say. And I want to learn more about you, right? And so exactly what you're saying, why did you do that and be able to take the lowest to top? It's because they trusted you, because week after week, month after month, you showed up, you provided value. You didn't come in pushy. You didn't come in and say, I need all this stuff. You just focused on what they needed. And this is one thing I really want to put out there for everyone to hear. Whether you're running a business, you're trying to do a business, you're trying to be a med device sales, you're trying to be super successful, you're trying to break into this industry, how about you focus on them and not you?
100%.
The moment you focus on others' needs and how you can help them and provide value than yourself, you will have more success and more money than you've ever known what to do with, because that's what business, and just so you guys know, when I say business, that's still in med device sales. You're running your own business in med device sales, your own territory. So just how do you continue to provide value and focus on them and not about yourself, and understand it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen a week from now. But if you can go with the long term in mind, you will be able to break into the industry. You will be able to actually convert surgeons once you're in the industry. You'll actually be able to grow your territories, because, again, instead of being transactional and doing it quickly, you're actually like, I'm going to play the long game. I'm going to build relationships. And welcome to how we get people hired so quickly in med device sales, because we're doing it over an 8-week span, 6-week span, whatever, and just doing touch points and showing that we do our research and value no different than once they're in the industry. So I just want to say thank you on that, because that is absolute gold, what you just said. And it's so cool to watch you going from marketing to sales. Now, is it okay to ask a little bit more of that transition? Because I know there's a lot of people who are going to say, oh, marketing to sales, and then we get, hey, how do I be a sales trainer? Can you kind of just talk about that transition? Because I know one thing you and I talked about off air was, hey, that's change. And that's scary, right? You went from something for 10 years, you crushed it in, to now, hey, you're going into sales. But what you guys just heard is everything she did for the last 10 years helped her
100%.
into the new role. So can you just talk to that?
Yeah. So in marketing, as a marketer, I asked to go into sales training because you can't be good at marketing until you know your products, right? So I did do the sales training. I did the whole pass fail, right? So my job on the line, to go into training. And once I got into training for marketing, I was in the field. I made sure as a marketer that I got out into the field, that I worked with the sales reps, that I understood what their problems were, what their needs were, how they're interacting with their surgeons, what they're up against, and how I can help them. So I think because I got out in the field a lot more as a marketer, it helped with the transition. So when I went to sales, there wasn't that fear. I also loved it, being in front of our customers and being in the OR. And then when I got out there, it was easier as a transition. And that's what's really cool. You can use any job within med device to build on it and build on it and build on it to get to the next level. So, I mean, I'm hoping everybody through your program will get into med device as a sales rep, but that wasn't for me. But I got in as a marketer and then just worked my way out. But I'll tell you this much, when I was out in the field as a sales rep / trainer, I kind of had a hybrid role that I sort of formed for myself. And that's also what's really cool. Like sometimes a job develops because you do it.
Bam, come on.
Right?
Everyone's always like, we say this all the time. It goes back to everyone's like, oh, it has to be this. There are literally no rules because when you continue to provide, like, for example, this is what I want people to hear, like yourself, Heidi, when you're a top performer, guess what? When a company's like, how do we just keep them? How do we actually use them with their strengths? And how do we actually have success with it? You'll watch stuff morph into things. And like you're saying, like you didn't plan on that. And then they're like, oh, here, let's do it.
And I never planned on being a trainer. Ever, right? I'm like, I've never been a teacher. That's not my skill set. I don't know. But all of a sudden, because I was out in the field training surgeons, doing all these training programs, I had every single region calling me saying, okay, well, how did you do that? Can you help us? Well, how did you break into that area, which was completely different than what our focus was in the field. So there were so many things coming at me and people were kind of pulling me in from regions that weren't mine. And so then corporate finally called me and said, Heidi, what are you doing out there? Everyone is calling you. Go, we'd like to bring you into global training. We think that makes the most sense. And they said, come out, spend the week with us, see if you like it, see if this makes sense. And I'm like, oh, this does make sense. I really like it. And that brought me to training. And it was the most amazing experience.
That is so cool. And like, I want everybody to keep hearing this is like Heidi, where she's always been, she's focused on that and done that job very well. There's so many people I watch that are like thinking about the next thing and then they don't do what they're currently doing very well, which then doesn't lead into opportunities for them. But you focused on doing what you were doing really well. And one thing I want to mention is if you guys don't know this, a lot of times in med device sales, marketing will complain about sales. Sales will complain about marketing because sales will be like, marketing doesn't know what we need. Marketing will be like, the sales don't know what they're doing. Like there's all this stuff. But the fact that you would go out there, learn from them, hear them, be able to go in, then it just made you stronger in your marketing. But then you actually understood it. And then you were able to go out in the industry. And then that just makes you even stronger to where you're at now because you've had both. And then you've done the training.
Yes.
To be back in global marketing.
Yeah. So I was strategic when I went into sales, right? So I had marketing's a long-term plan. Yep. It's not tomorrow. It was a long-term plan. So I went in with strategy and I had to change the whole division to say, okay, well, this is going to work. I swear it's going to work. And nobody trusted me. I'll tell you this much because it's a little bit younger when I went out and some of my reps were older than me. And they're like, Heidi, we've been at this X amount of time and it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And they told me it wasn't going to work. And I said, well, how about we give it a shot? If nothing else is working, why don't we give this a shot? And then I had, at the end of my stint there, they're like, don't go. Yep. We need you.
Crazy how that all works, huh?
They're like, we're number one. So I would say too, like if you're out there and you're doing something and it's the right thing to do, obviously for the patient, for the hospital, for the surgeon, you're going in the right direction. Keep going. Yep. Even if there might be people that think like, yeah, that's not going to work. You're not going to get that sale. And also don't worry about the no. Like if you're talking to a surgeon and they tell you no, no, this isn't for me. No, I don't like it. Just ask why. Have them elaborate. Say, if it's no, you don't want this. Okay, great. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you would need? What other information would you need in order to make this a successful product for you? Why is it that it's not working for you? What, and just keep asking those questions
Come on.
and then take all that information back and do your homework. Is there a clinical study that matches what this surgeon was saying to match up with that need? So either A, you can go back to them, or you can test this out with another surgeon. But really, no, to me, I would always walk away from no's with a smile on my face, and my team would look at me like I was crazy. They're like, they said no, Heidi. And I
Yep.
said, no, they didn't. They told us why.
Yes.
And that was our opportunity. I walked away, I was like, this is an opportunity. We can go and find the reasons why.
Oh, come
And we
on.
didn't have it.
We say this all the time, and like I try to preach this to our people and the people I work with is a no is a no right now.
That's right.
Because what most people don't do in sales, and we talked about this yesterday, and I always am trying to share this with most people, is most people again go in selling thinking about themselves and then tell all the products they have, and then they'll just get a no and they'll be like, that person stinks or whatever. Like they'll start downplaying them, but they never ask the questions. I always make the joke, be a 3-year-old, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like go to a 3-year-old. Hey, I need a water. Why? Because I'm thirsty. Why? Because I just worked out. Why? Because I want to. You see where it goes, and they'll actually like spill it. It's the same thing. Is when you got the no, you could most reps will just be like, dang it, and they walk away. But when you can actually like go dig deeper, a lot of times so many surgeons don't even know about all the other benefits that you have. They just heard one thing, or you guys will find this out is there's a lot of reps, unfortunately, that will share false information about your stuff to the other doctors. And it's a lot of times by asking those questions, you'll be able to counteract and be like, well, that's not true. And like you can find studies to do it. So that's such a good point of being able to ask, because a no, maybe it is, but there's a good chance they just don't understand it or you don't understand it, and you have to come back and then you'll be able to answer it later.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid. I think that's the other thing too, that as a young rep, when you go and you talk to a surgeon, they're smart. And that's
Yeah.
why I like working with surgeons. They're so smart. And sometimes you go in front of them, you're like, wait, I don't have a doctorate degree, right? I'm not at their level and I don't want to challenge them. It's not challenging them, it's understanding them. So think about it that way.
You're right. And it's like I want to bring it back for people that are trying to break into medical device sales, right? If you go in and somebody doesn't want to like help you out or they don't do it, just you can ask the question, hey, why? Or like, hey, would you give me any recommendations? They say no. And be like, oh, no worries. Is there a reason why? Yeah, it could be uncomfortable, right? But you guys have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and just understand, like with surgeons, with people trying to break in, there's not just one, right? There's many fish in the sea, but just being able to understand, because we have this talk about a lot of the top performers, right? Top performers are always reflecting. The top performers are always trying to get better. Even when like we get a deal done, guess what? How do we make it better next time? What did I learn through this process? What can I do to actually make the next time faster? Or what can I do to provide a little bit more value as you go, compared to a lot of reps I see, they'll get a deal done and they're high five and they're like, oh, I'm going to go have a beer now and just chill. And then that's it, right? Again, nothing wrong with going and celebrating, but like the top performers are always like, how do I get a little bit better? How can I understand it? What can I do? And are there ways to leverage where I'm even currently at? You get a deal and can it turn into something else? And so it's always that self-reflection. But I think that's the biggest thing, whether you're breaking into medical device sales or you're in med device sales or doing it. Most people don't want to do the self-reflection, because here's the biggest thing about growth and top performers. They're always trying to get better. And when you're always trying to get better, you know what you have to actually understand? There's stuff you're not that good at. And you have to reflect on that. And then you have to keep moving forward.
No, and I agree with you. And I think the other thing is have a team, right? Even within your own company. So maybe somebody not in your division, maybe in a different division, maybe you have a mentor within your division, maybe outside your division. Start learning things, because
Yes.
it will just build your craft so much better. And the other thing too is, like, we keep talking about the surgeon, and I know I'm guilty of it too. Like, you're selling to a surgeon, but remember, as a sales rep for med device, you have so many different call points, and the hospital administration is a big one of them. And, you do need the surgeon as your key opinion leader to help drive a product into the hospital. So you definitely want to line up with them. And remember, if they don't understand the value of your product, they're not going to bring it into the hospital, because a surgeon who brings a product into the hospital, they put their reputation on the line to bring a product in, and they don't do it for every product. It's if there's a specific need for that product. So you have to have, get those KOLs or key opinion leaders, line them up, and make sure you show them 100% value.
And that has to be the value. Now, let me make this all easy for you. this is doing the job to get the job. If you're trying to break into medical device sales, you need a KOL, key opinion leader, to like represent you. You're trying to break in, find a rep who actually goes crazy about you. What are you doing different that you know that you're going to provide value once you get in the industry? Again, so many people are coming asking for jobs, asking what they can get, compared to our people who get in the fastest. They're providing value. They're actually coming with ideas. They're actually learning some information from somebody else because they got on calls, and then they're like coming up with their own ideas, and they're like, that's actually a pretty good idea. And then it actually can help. And that's what people miss. Even though you're not in the industry, there's always the ones that I see that are actually having the most success, and why it carries over, because doing the job to get the job. It's no different whether it's a territory manager or a regional manager to the surgeon or somebody else. It's how are you learning more about them, and how can you continue to provide value and show that you're going to be really good? Because even here's the thing, you can have a surgeon that loves your product, but if they don't trust you as the rep, or they don't believe you're going to actually be able to get them what they need in the hospital system and follow through, they're not going to move forward with you. They have to believe wholeheartedly this product is the absolute best, and the person who's behind it is going to be able to deliver it the way they need it for them to even make a conversion with that.
And the most amazing thing too is if you're in a hospital system that has residents, surgeons want to teach residents all different techniques. That is so important to them, that not only do they learn their technique in the hospital, because they don't know where the resident's going to land afterwards. Hopefully they land at that hospital, but they might not have a position for them, and they might go somewhere else. So they want to make sure they're they know all the products out there that are available to them, and they know how to use them. So it's interesting if you talk to a resident and you say, what is your surgeon currently doing for X technique? And they'll say, whatever it is, and that's not your product. Say, have you ever tried, introduce your product? And they say, oh, that's really interesting. And you talk to the resident, maybe a chief resident, and you get them on board.
Yep.
They'll help you talk to the surgeon and bring that product in, because maybe there's something in it for them. Maybe they can write a paper, a white paper, which is something that can get them credit. And all surgeons want to have, some kind of paper behind them or clinical study that they're a part of, because that helps them in their career as well.
Yeah, exactly. And they're always trying to continue to grow in that career. That's a big thing. And that's a great point in surgeons and residents, right? They're in the building blocks, right? And then they want to be the key opinion leaders for med device companies one day, and have their name recognized. Guys, just again, going back to if you're trying to break into this industry, it's like, hey, when reps go, they want people to be like, oh, Jacob, you recommended that human being. They were a rock star. Great job. And now it all builds on each other. So I love that. Now, one thing I know this is always a big question, because I know people probably listening are like, Jacob asked this question, is like, Heidi, you went from marketing, you actually crushed it there, and then you went into sales and crushed it. Can you just give us a couple tips of what you did to absolutely crush it in sales, to then become a sales trainer? Because some people for the first time might be like, wait, what's a sales trainer? What, like, I can do that? Because they always ask what the progression in the career is.
There's a progression wherever you want to go, you can go, right. So just find, and roles keep coming up. So I'll answer your first question though, about how did you crush it in sales? Yeah. And I'm going to kind of reiterate a few things. One is listening, right? So I 100% went into the customers, and we had what they call business meetings, right? So you go into your customer, you review what their current spend is, review what they're currently doing, and then you ask them, what else do you need to do? And a lot of the materials management will tell you they have goals, right? Their goals are to save X amount of dollars. And then you go through your portfolio and say, okay, where can we provide value? So if you can provide value to materials management so they can hit their operation goals for the hospital, then you've just provided amazing value. Yep. Be their partner, not their sales rep. If you align as their consultant, as their partner, then they will have trust in you. And the minute they have trust in you, they will continue to bring their products in. Show up when you say you're going to show up. Do what you say you're going to do. And if something happens with your product, sometimes products fail. That happens. It's not uncommon to have that happen. Yeah. Take responsibility. And if something happened to your product in the OR and you weren't there, show up and make sure that your surgeon knows that you care. You always ask about the patient first. Never ask about the product first. Always say, doctor, thank you for bringing this to my attention. How is the patient? Be human first. That's what I always tell people. Be human first. Once they say how the patient is, roll it back. figure out what went wrong with the product, make sure you write your reports and send that back in so you can get them answers, and show up. Don't ignore the problem. Obviously, A, you can't for FDA reasons, and B, for human reasons, make sure you show up for your patient. Apologize. It's okay to apologize. Even if you're not sure, like you don't want to apologize for the product, apologize for the experience that they had. Because we don't know if the experience was the product or if it was them, but they had a bad experience, whatever it was.
Yep. And that last piece is huge, because what I see a lot of reps do is they'll start blaming. Well, you probably did this wrong, right? Well, that is, first off, don't ever tell a surgeon what they did wrong, because that is the last time it will be it. But like, again, I always used to have that happen. Like, of course, like we had times where like the actual device just didn't work, and be like, I'm so sorry that you had to go through this. Like, we will look into this, make sure. And then again, like if they had a product and they had a couple on the shelves and they didn't work, well, guess what? I'm going to make sure, hey, don't worry about that. We'll make sure that it gets all taken care of for you. Again, it's what people miss so much is, yes, you got to go sell your product and do it, but so much med device sales is actual customer service and it's account management and making sure that they're continuing to be happy and just learning about them. And so that is such a good piece. And like you said, it's actually just listening. We talked about this yesterday at our event, is the top sales reps. If you just listen, you know what most people will tell you is what they need and what they want. And then that's all it is, solution selling. Hey, what's the problem you're facing? How can I make solutions? Now, the only thing is sometimes you have to ask really good questions to get that solution and learn about where they might have some struggles.
And I have two more points. One on the device itself. Surgeons have memory in their hands. If they use a device that wasn't yours, right? So maybe they use something else more often and they're used to it. And maybe the trigger is a little bit different than yours. Maybe you push it instead of pull it, or whatever it is. Their hand remembers that device. So when they switch to something new, they might not have thought they did something wrong. They might just, as in memory. And I know I've done this too. When you drive somewhere, you're used to driving to work every day. And on the weekend, sometimes you're not driving to work, but you inadvertently start driving towards work. I've done that in the past, but like, just think of that memory. So like a surgeon has like that kind of memory in their hands. And so yes, be polite and then review the product with them, do it out of the OR. Say, let's just run through the product one more time. I'm not sure if, there's something with the product or the technique, but let's run through it. Let's run through the product and then have them hold in their hands. You hold one in your hands, they hold one in their hands. And so, you know what, doctor, when's your next case? I will be there with you. And then you'll notice it won't happen again. And the doctors will always tell me when I'm in the room, they say, Heidi, when you're in the room, it never happens. Of course it doesn't, because I walk them through it. And they don't have to rely on the muscle memory. They hear my voice.
Yes. And you get to coach them. But here's the one thing I was smiling while you're saying that is actually make sure it's your product too.
Oh, that's true.
The amount of times, like this is where you start asking questions, learning the amount of times where I would have a surgeon just like start ripping what just happened. And then I would just ask a couple questions. I'm like, hey doc, I totally understand. I'm really sorry you had that, but our device actually doesn't do that. So that wasn't my device. I'm the wrong rep. Right. So just so you know, it happens a lot because there's a lot of nurses that they'll be calling me and ripping me. And I'm like, hey, I appreciate you calling, but that's not even my device and I can't help you. But I just say that you're 100% right. Is like going in and learning from them, but asking questions, make sure it is your device. But when it is, that's it. Like every surgeon always wants the support. Right. On certain divisions, they might be like, get out. I'm God. I can do it myself. But like most people just want to be listened to. They want to know that they're safe. It's just like that confidence of like, hey, I can do this. And going back to what you said, if they have a bad experience, just make it better. Go make sure that they show that you care. Right. It's all about that personable portion of you go and actually take the time to learn and hear about the experience. And then you actually show up to say that it's not going to happen again.
Yeah. And I will tell you, when I work with new surgeons in the OR, I would get there for the beginning of their cases and I'd stay all the way to the end of the cases. Sometimes it was starting at 6 a.m., ending at 10 p.m. But you know what happened at the end of 10 p.m.? And I exaggerate, maybe 7 p.m., right? But like at the end of the case, when I'm in case after case after case with them, then I sit in the doctor's lounge with them at the end of the day and they look at me and they go, you've earned all of your questions. What do you got for me? And I said, when you're standing, I'm standing. You're in this case, I'm in this case. You're with this product, I'm with you with this product. So that's how sometimes you might not get them to talk and say, Heidi, well, I sat in front of them and I asked them and they didn't want to tell me about it because they're too busy and they're running to this case and they're running to that case. Because we tell them, ask the questions, find out what they don't like. And they don't have time for you. Okay, well, find a different reason to be in their case for another product, if you have a full line of product,
Yep.
sit with them in those cases, provide support on those cases. And then at the end of the day, they will give you that time. They've already talked to the patients. They've already done their notes. They've already done everything now. And they look at you and go, wow, I'm impressed. They're
That,
impressed with you.
that is so good, because why I want people to hear that is it's sometimes they just want to know you're willing to do what they'll do. You'll suffer with them, right? Like I talk about this all the time when we did strength and conditioning. What builds strength and conditioning, like what builds actual sports teams, is that these people suffer together and then they actually can relate to each other. That's what happens, right? Now, I'm not saying you're suffering when you're in the OR room, but like the fact that they're seeing you do that, most reps, like I always say, 9 to 5. Why they look at it and they're not doing 9 to 5, but they'll cut it early. They got all their stuff. But when they can see somebody, let's just take this outside of even the OR, when you're at the hospital and you're with people and you just relate with them and they see that you actually care. Some of the best conversations I had was like SPD at 8 p.m. On a Friday night. I'll never forget one of my biggest accounts. I did that, got all of their numbers, asked what they needed, asked if I could do anything, help to make the process easier for them. They told me everything, and they actually told me about a couple leads that I didn't even know about to go get some deals done. And the reason I'm just saying that is people just want to know that you're willing to do it. And like that with the surgeon, they saw that you were willing to actually go and put in the time with them and know what you didn't do the whole time. Try to sell, try to talk to them, try to question them. You were just there and they noticed it. And that meant more because they understood that you actually respect them when you do that.
Absolutely. And I think you need their respect. If you want to build your key opinion leaders, you want them to vouch for you, to go to in front of hospital administration for your product. You need to trust each other. And I think that's so important. And I think that, hopefully those are good sales tips. I know I could probably go on for hours and
we could go.
hours.
We'll probably have to just have 18 other episodes because we just, me and you could probably talk for the next 5 hours. But yeah, those are great tips.
But hopefully those are good. And then I want to talk a little bit more about, so once I went from sales to training, that was definitely a great experience because training, and I know this is something that everybody here has either been through or going to go through or been through with you to prepare to get through. So it's so important to know what you're getting into a med device, because once you go to a med device training, if you don't have the foundation going in and the understanding of what you're going into, if you don't pass your training, you don't get the job.
Yep.
And that's what's tough, because I've been in situations where I've had to train individuals that didn't really understand enough about what med device was, and they struggled and they didn't pass, and we had to let them go from the course. So having a foundation where you can ask questions freely, you can feel comfortable in that environment, because I know Jacob creates a really comfortable environment to ask questions, to be inquisitive and vulnerable sort of in that space, where once you get to the real job portion of it, yes, there is a portion where you can ask questions, but you have to know your stuff, because at the end of what you're doing in the training for med device, you have a patient at the end of the table, and their lives are in your hands. And any med device company will not let you out there until they think you're fully prepared for that life and to be in your hands.
It's so true. And this is the thing, you're 100% right on. The people, this is what most people do is like, again, med device. And they're just like, I'm just going to go. And there's so many people who are like, I'm just going to go do it on my own. And again, that's when I'm like, hey, good luck. And I hope it all works out for you. But it's like, everybody tells me what they need in med device sales. I'm like, you're not in it. You don't know what you need. There's 18 things you don't even know that we're going to teach you that you didn't know you needed. Right. Yeah. And it's the same thing is like, we talk about do the job to get the job. But I always say, if I just got people a job, I suck. Right. It's like, we're teaching people how to actually come in and go through training and be able to go into the industry and actually know what to do, because how we set stuff up is we prep them. So they're like, oh, this course it's challenging, but then it's like, or this program's challenging with the mentorship, but then it's like, oh, I understand why you did it. And it's why we can get people that have been able to be like a nurse with no experience hired as a full line rep and running at 240% to plan in 5 months, right? It's like they have to do it, but you're so right, is so many people will hear what you just said. I have to pass the training once I break in. Well, guess you didn't know that one. So now you guys do. Welcome to Heidi for that.
Sorry.
But that's perfect. That's what I want them to hear, because they don't know. Like going back to you don't know what you don't know. And then you'll have the people who that intimidates them and they're like, I don't know if I want to do this industry. And let me just sit here and tell you guys, if that is the truth, yeah, maybe don't do this industry, because we talk about this all the time. Right now, we're seeing between 500 and 700 people go up for a single job.
Yeah.
If you're not the person who's like, let's go, baby, like this is what I live for and I want to be that winner, that's who you're going up against. Same thing with sales. Like the people that are going to do the best in sales and be able to go is like, when you hear what she just said, be like, I believe in myself. Yeah, I might not know right now, but if I go get this right training or if I just apply myself, I can be there. So I'm really glad you just said that because most
Yeah.
people are like, it's all the questionable. And I'll just sit here and tell you, because you know this, we watch a lot of people who just wanted to just do med device sales for the money or whatever it is. And they don't truly understand what it is. And it's like, if you don't do it for the right reasons, it's going to be tough.
But I will say the folks that do pass, which, most of them do pass, right?
Especially if you have a good sales trainer and the person,
Right,
the kid, and the people actually care about the job and actually put in some effort and try to learn. Yeah, you usually get the job.
I will say the trainers, they want you to pass.
Yes.
Everybody that's training you wants you to pass. And I don't know every company, but I know a lot of companies, they put in the time, they put in the effort, they work with you, they work alongside you. I mean, I put in the extra hours to work with people who are having trouble to make sure they pass. We want you to pass. That's the goal. We know that you're going to be good. When they pass, right, at the end of the course, there's such like a joy and fulfillment that you've done something that was so tough and sort of beyond what your natural knowledge base was.
Yep.
If you do the training class with Jacob, right, and you're in this class and you learn the foundation and you come to a sales training class with foundation, you are going to be somebody that's seen in this class, because if you already know things, you know how to move around an OR, understand like how important that is. You're not making those types of small mistakes and errors, and you have that level of respect for the operating room. Sometimes we have to even teach that, like, okay, stand back, right? Don't walk forward, which is crazy to think that somebody, in our trial environment, they actually walk towards the table. I'm like, whoa, you can't do that, right? So having that foundation, then you're going to stand out in that class as somebody who's a lead. And when you kind of end that class as somebody who's like somebody to watch, people will watch you. And it's never a bad thing. And I used to say this to every training class. It's good when people watch you.
Come on.
Just succeed. Just keep succeeding. Do what you're going to do and have them watch you, because then they'll promote you. They'll get you to the next level. The best thing that can happen is when somebody's watching. I
love that you said that, because one of the best things that I ever used to hear is like, I remember my manager when I was at Medtronic, she called me one time and she's like, I get a lot of calls about you. And I was like, why is that? And they're like, they always call to see how the kid with no sales experience as a full line rep is doing. And like, that's when I was doing it. And it's like, again, people are always watching you guys.
It's good.
That's what people don't understand. And you want it. Like you said, so many people are scared, but it's like, let me just make this. If you guys are going to do anything impactful, you're going to make a change. First off, there's always going to be people watching, but there's always going to be people who are supportive and not supportive, right? Like you have to just be okay with that. But like, I just want you all to know, you want to exceed. You want people watching, because that's what we do this for, right? And so, yeah, that is such a great point. And now one thing I really just wanted to transition to and hit on is, so you went sales, you were successful in sales, then sales training. So what brought you back to marketing?
Just by nature, my nature is marketer. I've always had a passion for marketing, and I want to make bigger impacts. So I know the sales side. I know what the surgeons need. Always can learn more, always like learning. But what I really like doing now is helping every single salesperson be successful. And you said this in the beginning, sometimes marketing and sales don't speak.
Yeah.
Now I feel like finally, with all my experience, I can be the voice of sales in marketing with true sales mentality, but marketing mentality combined, and be a powerhouse for the field, so they don't have to say, why aren't we getting this? Or they don't understand. And I can make larger impacts all over the world. And that's what we do.
And it makes you more dangerous for everybody just to hear. But the one thing I also wanted to say is, because I didn't even know it until I got really into like with Innovis and we started working more on that aspect, is I didn't know there was a thing called global marketing. Right? You hear about marketing, but like most people don't even know, hey, what's global marketing? And then I was like flying to Athens, Greece. And I'm like, this sounds like a good time. You know what I mean? And so can you just kind of speak to like the global marketing of what you guys do for anybody that might not know what global marketing is?
Yeah. So it sounds glamorous, but there's a lot of work. So
lots of work, lots of time zones if you don't know what the global means.
Lots of time zones, lots of work. So anytime there's any problem with your product anywhere in the world, it goes to you. Whatever that product is that it gets rolled up, it goes to you. You have to solve it. Not only are you solving the problems with the product, but you're also trying to figure out, within your portfolio, how to get the most out of your portfolio in the field all over the world, right? One product might do really well in the US, but do really terrible in Europe.
Come on.
One product might do well in Japan and tank in the US, right? Because it just doesn't have that patient, right? So different patients have, and this is a cool thing about, actually being in sales, because I know that all over the world, patients are different. The
Yep.
disease states are different
Yep.
and what they have in different countries versus what, the disease states we have here. So the products for those disease states are going to be more prevalent in one versus the other. And so we help, create marketing and content and support out, for all over the world. And we're their kind of sounding board to help them drive their business. And then also to help them collaborate with the rest of the countries, like all over the world, to make sure that, hey, well, what are you doing in the US? Even if it's a different product, maybe that technique or that strategy could work with this product. So we help drive different strategies all over the world. So some of them are succinct and similar, right? Some of them have portions of that strategy with a twist for the country. I mean, there's so many other things. I don't know how boring you want to get into
No.
it. Some other things,
honestly,
a lot of logistics.
that's what I just love. What I want people to hear this is most people are like, wait, there's med device sales out of the United States? Yes, my friends, it is all over the world. So the reason I wanted to just share that, and I appreciate you sharing that, is I talk to so many people, they're like, wait, they have it in the UK? And I'm like, there's human beings in the UK as well. So yes, we have medical device sales. But the reason I just want you hear all the opportunity, right? That was one of the things I loved. And when I was working with people in all the different spaces, it's like, oh, what is it going on in France that's different than the UK, than the US market, right? Like it's all the different stuff and you start learning about it. And so I think that is just so cool and what I absolutely loved. And because what I want you guys also to hear, every global marketer that I've met, it's like, hey, what's up? And they're like, I'm up at 6:30 a.m. and I'm on a call. And then I'm like, oh, when's your next call? When's your last one? They're like, oh, it's 9 p.m. because I got to meet with China. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, I think that's just cool. But like when you're saying, hey, there are long days. Now that's not every day, I imagine, but there are those days. And I want you guys to know is like, but that is the cool part of like, yeah, you guys get to be able to travel and do stuff. And so I just wanted to kind of show that to people because most people think it's, like if we're here in Phoenix, I only stay in Phoenix and that's it. Right? Like, no, there's so many opportunities with these med device companies to progress your career, go other ways with it, but also you can travel. You can be going and traveling around and doing launches and being on the cutting edge of stuff. And I think that was just the point I really wanted to get across to our new listeners is most of them just finding out about med device sales or people that are in their first or second year. They're like, I thought I just had to stay here my whole life. Right. And just being able to expand that knowledge base.
Well, the cool thing is any sales device rep would want to know their marketer. I mean, it's hard to know your global marketer. Sometimes they're a little bit more removed, depending on your accounts. But know your marketer because, like Jacob said, if you have a new product coming out, sometimes they'll do like a limited release of that product. And if you know them, if your territories line up, and there's a lot that goes into it, but they usually pick the best of the best to sell, right? Because they know it's going to get out in a way that makes sense for the market, that makes sense for the product. So even having that alignment of knowing who your marketing person is great. Like marketing is such a great avenue for sales reps. Sometimes there's you have to go through so-and-so to get to so-and-so. I get it. But if you get to meet anybody, in the company, if you go to the conventions, you'll see marketers at the conventions all the time. Introduce yourself. Make yourself known. I've met some local individuals at the conventions who I now talk to and sort of have a straight line to me, which I know is not probably ideal, but yeah. So it's a way to network.
It goes back all to the networking piece. And the one thing I just want everyone to kind of hear, because this might be really out there and it doesn't happen a lot. So I'm just going to put that out there. But like there was one of the girls we helped break into medical device sales. And now she started here in the US. Now she's doing it in the UK, right? There's an opportunity, right? So just so you guys know, there's those opportunities for people wanting to travel.
That does happen. I had a colleague of mine when I worked in New York, right? And her husband, she met in a training program, actually for med device. I don't know. She lived in England and she moved there and became a rep there. So there really is opportunity all over. And some folks even, it's not even just sales reps. So some folks go to different companies,
Yep.
right? So they move from one company to another company and they do a stint somewhere over, in a different country. And that's also an option, whether it's marketing or a different part of the company. You can do just 6 months, 8 months, 10 months somewhere. There's, these large companies, they have a lot to offer depending on what you want to do. So
Yep.
if you like the idea of getting into something, staying 3 to 5 years, but then you maybe get a little antsy and you want something new,
Yeah.
I always say try to, get a promotion or something every couple of years.
Love that.
But yeah, stay relevant.
And it can help you grow. And that's what I love. But Heidi, I really want to just get to our listeners. Like I always ask this, hey, what's your advice to people that are trying to break into medical device sales or that are in medical device sales, for the fact of like just being successful, right? Because again, I always say it's very similar because it's usually not like go talk to this surgeon and do this, right? It's a lot of the same thing. But like if people reached out to you and they're like, hey, Heidi, how do I break into medical device sales? Which please don't. She's very busy, my friends. But yeah, but if they reach out and they say, hey, what do I have to do to break into medical device sales? What's your advice to someone like myself or someone who's like, hey, I'm in the industry, what's your advice to me that now that I'm a new rep in the industry, what's your advice that you're giving these people?
I think what you're doing is amazing, Jacob, because there's not, when I got in, it's who do you know, right? And you have to sort of know somebody to get in, but because you have such a wonderful program built that they can get the foundational information and get to know people through you because you have a wealth of, contacts. I think that's an amazing way. Again, I broke in because I knew somebody. People break in because, if I'm able to bring someone in, if somebody else is able to bring somebody in, it's hard. It's definitely hard to break in. But I would say if you have they always look for some kind of sales experience. You have to have some kind of sales experience to break in. A long time ago, they were looking even at like copier sales. I know it's a long time ago. Well, and like even showing my age here. And then like paychecks was another big one that brought people in. But any kind of real solid sales experience would be beneficial. If you don't, that's going to be really hard.
It is really hard. And actually, that's the thing that's funny is those most of the people that we help break in don't have any sales experience. And then that's what we teach is how to actually go through that process of overcoming those objections, right? Because that's what they want. But the funny thing is we still get people from Enterprise, Paychecks, ADP, right, that have been trying to break in for 6-12 months.
They can't do it.
Because again, this market now is so competitive, right? And even just having the bare minimum of the B2B, it's like, okay, great. Why are we going to trust Johnny or Sarah with a $1 million quota? Do we know it? So that's the big thing is you're right. The sales experience will help, but just so you all know, my friends, you all have sales experience. If you have friends, if you're married, if you have like know anybody, like there's sales because you're selling yourself. It's just overcoming those objections and learning that. But no, that's great advice.
No, absolutely. And I think that's what I was kind of saying. Like, if you go through a program like this and get this knowledge, and then you go into that interview and you already have this level of understanding, knowledge base, it comes across better, right? That like, okay, well, then your person comes across like, I didn't have sales experience, right? When I went in, like I sold at like Express back in the day, right? I had that kind of sales experience. And then I was selling arena stuff like entertainment. So it wasn't selling paychecks. So just so you know, like I didn't have that sales experience. But what I did have was they love my personality. I said, you're very personable. You look after your customers, you take good care of your customers, you're attentive, right? And all of those skills of just being, available to your customers and helping your customers kind of shine. So that, and they always say, you can learn, if you're open to learn things, you can learn things. Because when you go into any sales program, you don't know the product, even though you know how to sell. Here's the other kicker. If you know how to sell, right, but you don't know how to sell medical device, you might know how to sell paychecks, so you understand the sales process. But when it comes to selling med device, it's a little different.
Yeah, a little different. Yeah, come on.
You still have to learn how to sell med device. There's a lot of people in that sales continuum who you have to sell to, and it's more consultative than selling. And it's more about FDA regulations and claims and making sure you're saying the right things. You can't go off script at all. So that's very, very, very different. So you still have to learn and you still have to be taught.
And that's why I love that you said that, because so many people will be like, oh, can't teach the old dog new tricks, right? Those are the people who lose. because you're always learning. You always have to continue to progress because especially in med device, it's always changing. Every
Yeah.
month, every year, there's new products, there's new regulations, there's new things coming out. So it's just continuing to progress. So that's such a great point.
And for those who are a med device now, they're going through it, be coachable,
Yeah.
right? Kind of like you said, always be coachable, be humble, know that you don't know everything and be okay with that.
Yep.
I always used to tell my sales reps, have a bite of humble pie. Like, don't just keep talking and trying to try to boast and be smarter than everybody.
Prove your
Listen.
worth. Yeah.
Yeah. Prove your worth. And then have passion about what you do and passion for the patient. Always have passion for the patient. Every medical device company that you ever work with, patients first, 100%. So go in with that attitude.
I love that. Well, Heidi, again, we could talk for hours. We'll definitely be having you on again, but I just want to say thank you again from the bottom of my heart for taking time for sharing all this knowledge, because I know there's going to be so many people messaging us that just say thank you for this, because again, you just gave so much wealth of knowledge right there because of all the things they didn't know. They didn't know about marketing, sales training, and all the depth you went into. And it's been amazing to see the success you've had. And just want to also just say it's been such a pleasure getting to know you more and just the friendship we've created, because again, you're amazing at what you do. And it is so much fun to watch you continue to crush it. And I just want to say thank you for taking time and just joining us today and sharing so much knowledge with our listeners, because it means the world.
No, absolutely. It's such a pleasure. And I look forward to potentially meeting some of your folks that come out of your training class and being able to help you out.
Oh, there'll be some fun ones. It's going to be a great time. But if you guys are watching, if you can press that like and subscribe button, a 5-star review does help us grow this channel. If you guys are really interested in breaking into medical device sales, we do have our program at currently 8.2 weeks at $94,478 is where our average person is coming in at. We just got Chase hired in 5 weeks with Stryker. He came at 23 with no sales experience, coming from the finance background. Again, just showing if you know what to do and know how to play the game, you can win the game. So if you guys are really interested in breaking into medical device sales, you can click the link below, or you can reach out to us at New to Medical Device Sales or Jake McLaughlin on LinkedIn. But again, I just hope you all know we just want you to win. We want you to keep crushing it. And if you guys are already in the industry, we just want you to continue to go make the biggest impact on the patient's life, because we know if you change their life, you're probably going to hit quota. You're probably going to change your life, and you can go bless other people. And it's what we're all about here at New to Medical Device Sales. So I just want to say thank you so much for all of the support. Keep crushing it. Go after your dreams, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.